The dust in Merv doesn't settle. It hangs, suspended in a city where 500,000 heartbeats stopped in a single afternoon. There is a specific kind of silence that follows a Mongol conquest. It isn't the quiet of peace. It's the hollow, ringing void left behind when a civilization is deleted. When the men are already cooling in the dirt, and the women realize that the end of the world didn't come with the fire. It's coming now, in the shadow of the tents. What you're looking at isn't just a series of battles. It's the most efficient system of cultural liquidation ever devised. A machine so perfectly engineered that it didn't just break empires, it unmade them. And the fuel for this machine was a calculated, state-sponsored brutality directed at one specific target: women. This should disturb you. It has to. Because roughly 16 million people walking the earth today are the living, breathing evidence that this system worked. Their DNA is a record, a map of what happens when terror stops being a side effect of war and becomes the primary technology. They didn't stumble into this. They refined it. They turned human agony into a repeatable science. By the time we're done, you'll understand why cities the size of modern-day Seattle simply evaporated. You'll see how entire languages were snuffed out in a single generation. And you'll see the horrifying role women were forced to play, not as participants, but as the ground upon which the Mongol Empire was built. This is the Mongol terror machine, and once you see the gears turning, you'll never look at a history book the same way again. Historians have spent centuries obsessing over how a nomadic population of barely 1 million people subjugated kingdoms 50 times their size. They talk about composite bows. They talk about the cavalry. They're missing the point. It wasn't the horse. It was the psychological surgical strike. In 1219, a governor named Inalchuk made a mistake that would end his world. He didn't just insult an emissary. He seized a Mongol trade caravan and had the merchants executed. When the Khan sent a diplomat to demand justice, Inalchuk shaved the man's beard, a devastating public humiliation. He thought he was being strong. He didn't realize he had just signed the death warrant for every man, woman, and child in the Khwarezmian Empire. The Mongols didn't just attack. They sent a message ahead of the blades. Whoever submits shall be spared, but those who resist, they shall be destroyed with their wives, children, and descendants. Notice the phrasing. Wives and children weren't collateral, they were the leverage. This wasn't a threat made in a fit of rage. It was policy. It was advertised. They wanted you to know exactly what would happen to your daughters if you didn't open the gates. Fear travels faster than a Mongol horse, and it's much cheaper than a siege. The calculation was cold. You have 50,000 soldiers and 12 cities to take. You don't fight 12 wars. You pick one city, the most beautiful, the most cultured, the one with the most to lose, and you turn it into a slaughterhouse so horrific that the other 11 cities surrender via messenger before you even crest the horizon. You spend your brutality once, like currency, to buy the submission of a kingdom. It is mathematically brilliant, and it is pure evil. Take Nishapur. It was a jewel of the Islamic world, a place of mathematics and poetry. When it fell in 1221, the Mongols didn't just kill. They sorted. They ordered every head to be piled into separate pyramids, one for men, one for women, one for children. The daughter of the Khan's son-in-law sat on a gilded chair and watched the process. She wanted to ensure the work was thorough. But for the women who weren't put into those pyramids, the nightmare was only starting. The Mongol system of erasure followed 5 deliberate acts. The first act was biological replacement. When a Bemindadidi city fell, the women were treated like captured livestock. The most noble, the daughters of scholars like a girl we'll call Reina, were claimed by commanders. Reina was 19. She spent her morning studying astronomy. She spoke 3 languages. By evening, she was being measured by the span of her hips. This wasn't about lust. It was about the future. When you force captive women to bear your children, you aren't just winning a war. You're colonizing the next century. Those children grow up speaking Mongolian. They worship the sky god, Tengri. Reina's poetry, forgotten. Her language, forbidden. In one generation, her entire lineage is diverted into the service of her conquerors. In 2003, geneticists found the proof. A single Y chromosomal lineage originating in Mongolia about 1,000 years ago is carried by 0.5% of all men on Earth, 16 million men. That isn't natural growth. That is the genetic signature of systematic, continental-scale conquest. The second act was the theater of humiliation. On February 13th, 1258, Baghdad fell. This was the seat of the caliphate, the center of the world. The Tigris River ran black with the ink of 1 million destroyed books, then red with the blood of its citizens. But the real blow was delivered to the women of the palace. These were women who had lived their lives in total seclusion, considered almost holy. The Mongols dragged them into the public squares. They tore away their veils. They stripped them in front of the surviving men. It was a message to every man in the Islamic world. Your leaders cannot protect their own families. Your God did not intervene. You are not just defeated, you are invalidated. The Mongols then sold these noble women in the markets for the price of a single silver coin. The low price was the point. It was a statement of worthlessness. The third act was the tactic of Karash, the living boards. Imagine a man named Suren, a father from a village that fell 3 days ago. He is being driven at sword point toward the walls of the next city. Next to him is a woman carrying a child. They are the human shields. The defenders on the walls look down and see their own neighbors, their own cousins, being pushed forward as a carpet for the Mongol siege engines. If they shoot, they kill their own. If they don't, the Mongols take the wall. Either way, the defender's spirit breaks. If a woman fell into the moat, she wasn't rescued. Her body was just more fill for the ramp. You weren't a human being. You were construction material. The fourth act was the trafficking. This was the largest forced migration in human history. A woman from Uzbekistan could end up in a slave market in Korea. A girl from Poland might find herself in the Gobi Desert. They created a permanent infrastructure of human trade. If a slave died within 30 days, the Mongol markets offered a warranty, a refund in silver. Entire ethnic groups were scattered so thinly across the continent that they simply ceased to exist. They were diluted into the empire until there was nothing left of their original identity. The fifth and final act was the erasure of memory. They didn't just kill people, they killed the people who knew things. Historians, poets, teachers. In most medieval societies, women were the primary carriers of culture. They were the ones who sang the songs to the children. They were the ones who remembered the names of the ancestors. By targeting women through violence, enslavement, and forced assimilation, the Mongols were cutting the transmission lines of civilization itself. When the grandmother dies in a foreign land and the mother is forbidden from speaking her tongue, the grandchild has no home. The chain is broken. The Mongols are closing in on the final survivors of the royal house. The gates are splintering. The gold is being melted down. This is the moment where history is written in blood, and the only way to ensure these stories aren't buried forever is to stand with those who uncover them. If you want to see how this ends, and why we can never allow these truths to be silenced again, you need to subscribe right now. This is the only way to keep the light on the darkest corners of our past. The machine worked. Merv, once the largest city on Earth, is now a collection of ruins in a desert. Nishapur is a series of mounds under the dirt. We don't remember their songs. We don't speak their languages. 1 million Mongols conquered 50 million people, not because they were faster, but because they were more willing to be monstrous. They understood that if you break the women, you break the future. The death toll was 40 million people, roughly 11% of the global population at the time. But the real cost isn't found in the numbers. It's found in the silence. It's found in the 16 million men who carry the DNA of a conquest they don't even remember. History remembers the borders of empires, but the earth remembers the people. These stories are hard to hear, but they have to be told. Because the victims of the Mongol machine died twice, once in the body and once when their stories were erased. We study the monsters of yesterday so we can recognize the ones of tomorrow. Empires rise and fall, but the tactics of terror, the systematic breaking of the human spirit, those remain. The shadows of the past are long, and they are still reaching for us. If you believe the lessons of history should never fade, hit like and stay with us. Because the more we understand the darkness of the past, the better we can protect the light of the future.